Excelsior, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And Santa Claus.
And welcome to a special 4th of July podcast covering The Amazing Spider-Man duology, as requested by Romello Malone. Hey there, Romello. We're finally doing this. Thanks for your patience. All right, Dragon. So, Dragon and Ezra, how the heck you guys doing tonight, folks?
Spectacular.
I'm doing pretty good.
One could say amazing, but that would be just too easy.
I
All right.
certainly wish that the 4th of July parades weren't canceled, but other than that, I'm pretty good.
Well, you know what, Dragon? You know what, Ezra? I think the best way to handle a divisive 4th of July is to talk about a divisive series of movies. Am I right?
Ah.
Yeah, it's true.
So, with that in mind, we're going to talk about, the 4th of July, it is an American icon, of course. It's an American institution. You know what else is an American institution, Dragon?
Spider-Man!
That's right. So, on this very divisive, very pseudo-apocalyptic 4th of July weekend, we're going to talk about a divisive, and, in the sense of, this all happened during the Sony hacks of 2015, arguably apocalyptic Amazing Spider-Man franchise that did kind of go down in flames. Who wants to go first with their thesis?
I guess I'll start us off.
All right.
All right, so it's crazy. It's been like 8 years since the Amazing Spider-Man, 6 years since the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Can you believe it?
It's all kind of a blur, but yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, when it comes to the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, I've always felt a little protective towards it. It's it doesn't get the credit it deserves sometimes in a post-MCU world of today. I remember going into the theater, like I did with Man of Steel, where we have the reboots coming, and it's like, hey, the new Superman, hey, the new Spider-Man movie, and it's like, okay, I've seen the Donner Superman, I've seen the Raimi Spider-Man. I mean, come on, you're not gonna go. That's basically then was absolutely definitive.
Uh-huh.
And so I came out of Amazing Spider-Man, and like I did with Man of Steel, where I come out of it, and I'm thinking, much to my surprise, it made a case for itself. It made an argument. I mean, again, I think now, in the wake of the MCU, I think it's a less strong argument. But again, coming out of the theater, I was like, you know what? I came in really closed-minded into that movie. Like, okay, it's gonna be like a fun little offshoot. Like, okay, it'll be a nice Elseworlds. Like, it'll be a nice what if Spider-Man. Okay, what if we did a little bit of a grittier take on Spider, a little more of a grounded take on a Spider-Man. Because it would have a really gritty marketing campaign. So that's kind of what you had going into it. So I came out of it, I was really impressed. And I was hoping, if they do another one, I hope it gets, we get more classic Spider-Man stuff in there. And to its credit, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 did have a lot of that. Had a bunch of other stuff, but did have a lot of classic Spider-Man stuff that did satisfy me to a great deal. So I'm going to give you this little analogy here. I call it the Spider-Man Homecoming sandwich analogy. So much like the compressed sandwich in Spider-Man Homecoming. Imagine you take the Raimi trilogy, the sandwich that is the Raimi trilogy, and it just feels like the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, in retrospect, is like kind of a compressed version of that trilogy, squished down like the sandwich from Mr. Delamar's in Homecoming, which is different for sure. It's you're sampling. It's like it's not bad. But it's missing a few key ingredients for sure. Again, from compressing a full thing where we want to get to the end, we want to get to something really next level, something really great in terms of a franchise. We want to compete with the big boys. We want to do something that differentiates ourselves. You did, but at the same token, you maybe sacrificed a few key ingredients in getting there. So it touched the hem of greatness for sure, but definitely it ran out of web fluid once it got up there.
All right, you know what? I think I'm going to be the most negative out of the three of us, so I'm going to run with Dragon Sandwich philosophy, and hopefully Ezra can end us out on our thesis in a positive way, but oh boy, what to say about the Amazing Spider-Man movies? I I mean, Dragon's right. They both do have redeeming qualities to them that we'll go over for sure. But honestly, guys, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I think they're both kind of a mess. And it's kind of funny because I feel like The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is a little less offensive, and yet it's got less highs. It's just kind of middle of the road. It's there. It's got a villain who I've been waiting to see, but since they don't have the setup that was in the Raimi movies for said villain, it just kind of comes across as like, well, why did you even bother? And also, the first movie has probably the stupidest moment in either of the two movies with the crane moment. I don't know where you guys want to talk about that, but we're having a conversation about the cranes. That's happening in this podcast. And then along comes Amazing Spider-Man 2. And like I said, Amazing Spider-Man 2, the interesting thing about that movie is that it certainly has some high highs to it. But man, it's a roller coaster because that movie's got some low lows as well. It really does. And that movie is honestly one of the most incoherent kind of studio meddling. Like, I like certain flavors of that movie. I feel like Dragon Sandwich philosophy is on point with like, oh, it's got a good taste to it, but it's just a little compressed. I don't know what to do with this flavor. I wouldn't eat a whole sandwich of it. I don't know, man. I find these movies a little difficult to go back to just because I feel like the studio interference is kind of all over them. Frankly, these feel like very, very corporate mandated movies, very corporately structured movies. Everything about them kind of feels like they were meant to hit a button or a check mark, if you will. And because of that, I just feel like these movies, outside of any of the other Spider-Man movies that exist, I feel like these movies lack passion. And, you got a competent director, Mark Webb, who does do his wheelhouse well with the romantic comedy elements. That stuff is handled very well. And, props to the two leads for carrying that stuff. But honestly, other than that, I feel like the two leads are kind of the constants here, and everything else is a little bit of a roller coaster in terms of quality. And I don't know, for that reason, man, I find the Amazing Spider-Man movies to be a little bit of an enigma of a franchise, man. I really do. All right, Ezra, end us out on a slightly more positive light.
Okay, well, this isn't really super positive, but the only reason I saw the first movie was because my mom's old coworker bootlegged it on DVD and gave it to us.
Awesome.
That's the only reason I saw it. So it goes to show you how much I kind of care about this movie. I never really thought of much of it. I still don't. I remember we got the second movie from the video store just because it was new and it was Spider-Man, and watched it and finished it, and all right. So yeah, that's pretty much my attitude towards the second movie. Yeah, I think you hit it right in the head when you said these two are kind of, as a whole, are kind of an enigma, where they definitely have some really good elements to them, but it's a whole package. They really don't deliver very much, and like you said, they just lack passion, and they lack the drive that was so clear with the Raimi movies, and lacks the charm, the kind of superhero charm that the Tom Holland movies have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a perfect example of the fact that, Sony outed Raimi because he wanted to basically be creative with his material, and he really wasn't following their time regulations, from what I remember. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But they ousted him, and they brought Mark Webb in just to basically make these movies just so they could have they could keep the rights. And I think it's a product. It's very clear. It's a product of that, which is it's unfortunate, but I guess that's just the way some things in movie business have to go sometimes, and that's just about it. Sorry, I wasn't too positive.
All right, Dragon, you've got kind of an uphill battle here, my friend.
Isn't that always the case? All right. All right, so let's a little background, like how we get like an Amazing Spider-Man franchise, or I guess depending on who you ask, a less than Amazing Spider-Man franchise. Anyway, okay,
There, Spider-Man.
okay.
He exists, Spider-Man.
All right. Anyway, so of course, as Sandy kind of alluded to, Spider-Man 4, the production falls through because, in essence, Raimi and company, they can't crack the story, and basically Raimi wants to avoid another a mandated Spider-Man 3 affair where the studio's going to meddle. He wants to make up for Spider-Man 3, and basically if they can't crack a story and they're throwing in things like Vulturous and all that sort of stuff, it's like, okay, something's not working here. I don't want to taint this thing any further. I gotta get out of here, which of course leaves Sony kind of in a bind. So basically, remember when this is coming out, when this is in development, this is like a year before Avengers, where basically Avengers is a foregone conclusion. Even not seeing the movie, they're bound to know, oh God, they've succeeded in building this universe, and they're going to cross them all over. This is the day we've been dreading. The only thing that could beat Spider-Man on the Marvel side of things, the Avengers. Oh no! So Avengers on the horizon. There's a panic over keeping the rights to Spider-Man because it'll be bigger than God. Then of course, who are they going to come after next? Once maybe the rights run out. Spider-Man in their camp, then they'll have everything but the Hulk. But he'll be in there though. Anyway, sorry, universal rights aside, moving on to refocusing. So, point being, this leads to them kind of we got to make a movie by hook or by crook, which obviously worst case scenario could lead to a fan four stick. If they're not careful, it could lead to a fan four stick. Luckily, Mark Webb, post 500 Days of Summer, comes along with a take on Spider-Man, basically exploring the Peter Parker side of Spider-Man, via the kind of the new in being, the whole parents' origin. The idea is parents got caught up and stuff, and they left, and kind of leaving kind of the big mystery. What the heck happened to the Parkers, man? Of course, Mark Webb using, as Tiki alluded to, kind of his wheelhouse, kind of his niche of kind of the great relationship writing, his strength there with the Gwen
500 Days of Summer is legitimately one of the best romantic comedies ever made.
Certainly. So again, basically they had an in of, Peter Parker's parents and Gwen Stacy, two things we have not seen with Spider-Man done before. Basically, Webb's kind of driving kind of credo for the movie is, Peter Parker's looking for his father, which invariably he is finding himself, and we're dramatizing this via Spider-Man. Basically, the thing that he becomes and becoming his better self is Spider-Man. So, it's all laid out there nice and neatly, which kind of is why you have the Who Am I ending with the English class, where, Webb's reason for the reboot is like, basically what the English teacher says, where all the stories have been told, but don't be afraid to retackle them if you bring a new theme with it. That was kind of his reason for taking on the job. So, style, again, as kind of said in the marketing and everything, gets a little bit more grounded, a little bit more practical. Like, for example, we do like practical web slinging, as he's swinging around the city and everything. Point being, movie goes over better than expected. Not a huge success, but basically it crosses the boundary for success, which basically intimates, hey, let's do a sequel. One, Spider-Man, 2, made enough money. Let's do another one. So, which then leads to Sony's fatal flaw, which, as I think it seems, especially you look at like Spider-Man 3 and just what Sony usually does on the regular, Sony's fatal flaw is that they're desperate to please everyone once they have a taste of success, which leads to overcompensation. We got to put everything in the kitchen sink in there. Which, of course, big thing as well, as they were trying to with the first movie. By the time the Avengers does come out, they're really trying to compete with the MC, which is building a universe, and they've succeeded in the Phase 1. They're getting the Phase 2, and that's where Spider-Man 2 is kind of entering here. Like, oh god, we gotta compete big time. We gotta build like a whole franchise. We gotta prepare a whole bunch of spin-off movies. They had. We have like three. Basically, they go into the movie. The only plan that they had going into the movie, the only thing I think Mark Webb wanted to talk about was, I got three hanging chads. I got Gwen Stacy, which everyone knows what's going to happen to Gwen Stacy, so I got to tell that story. I still didn't answer what happened with Peter Parker's parents, and Norman Osborn. I kind of built up this Norman Osborn character. So the point being, that's a skeleton of the movie he wants to tell, and I think, as we all know, we'll dive into the reasons of how those stories turned out. But film doesn't go so hot. Amidst all the speculation, all the spin-off movies, one Sony hack later, the Amazing Spider-Man franchise dies, but gives birth to the MCU Spider-Man. It's a beautiful baby Holland, man, and it's born. It's swinging off there, man. It's a wonderful thing, and that's basically the story of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise.
All right, one more thing, Dragon. Can we get into how terrible the marketing for Amazing Spider-Man 2 was?
Yeah, sure. What do you got?
Ezra, do you remember this?
Refresh my memory.
You're a little vague, Geek. You might want to nail it down.
Back when the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was coming out, it was just a bombardment. Like, first of all, I think there was at least 20 trailers. It was not an overstatement to say that you could cut together a good 40 minutes of footage from that movie, from the trailers and clips that they released. I mean, they practically released half the movie through trailers and clips. Secondly, it was just one of those movies that just had a million product placements and tie-ins, like, you know, like a Man of Steel or a Lorax, you know, where you just see it just plastered everywhere. I know, ironic in the Lorax's case, but it's true. But you know what I mean? You'd see it on cereal boxes. You'd see it at McDonald's. It'd just be like you could not get away from the fact that frickin' Amazing Spider-Man 2 was coming out. And every time I saw it, the more mediocre it looked, honestly. Mediocre.
Yeah, so. I remember seeing that all over the place as well.
Yeah, like on the side of Sony's worst trailer was like that.
All right. Although I do remember the first one or two trailers for that movie being legitimately exciting because they had that, you know, the opening shot with the free fall, and then like, ooh, look, it's the Sinister Six costumes, the Vulture in the background, ooh. But then it just got more. They just showed more and more and more.
And literally the last shot of the movie. So.
Yep.
It doesn't get any. I mean, look. To be fair, The Dark Knight did that as well, but they kept you on the hook, man.
Well, to be fair, Jurassic World also did that.
That's what I'm saying. Kingdom, to be fair, it has happened with other movies, but in this case, I mean, this is like everything that, like, all the stuff was in this marketing campaign.
All right. So let's pivot here. Let's transition into the origin story, the revamped origin story. Now, first of all, guys, I just want to, can we just acknowledge how freaking pointless and forced the whole, like, what happened to Peter Parker's parents? Oh my God. Like, that is honestly some of the most I don't give a fuck subplots of any superhero movie ever, in both cases.
Yeah, with stuff like that, you want the audience to be genuinely wondering what happened. You don't want the film to be telling you, okay, you need to be wondering about this. You need to make sure you're questioning what this is all about.
Sure. Well, here's the thing. I think the first film handled it a lot better than the second film did. Where, like, it was a big mistake to open the second movie with the more of the plane scene. Like, that was a terrible idea. Let's be honest. The whole, like, hey, remember that scene from the first movie that kind of worked, depending where you lean on it? Hey, let's do it again the second time from the father. And we take it in the plane. It's not a good idea. But well, let me break down the plane. Right. Anyway, let me break down the parent thing here. So, of course, the approach going into this movie is it's Peter Parker's story before it's like the iconic myth of Spider-Man's story. Where, you know, it's like, you know, when we're like doing what Raimi did, we're adapting the big story beats of Spider-Man, like, you know, the Amazing Fantasy 15 of it all. Like, these are the bits we all know we got to get to. But in this case, I kind of appreciate the slow burn. But here's the thing. So, the Richard Mary Parker mystery, it's not the key to Spider-Man, but it's always kind of there in the background. Like, if you're reading Spider-Man for the first time, you're reading that origin story for the first time, part of you's got to wonder, not intently, but it's like in the back of your mind, like a little casual question, like, you know, why is he with his aunt and uncle? And of course, if you peel back layers, well, the important thing that you're basically speaking to, Tiki, is like, it doesn't matter. His parents aren't there. He's with his aunt and uncle. You don't need to know any more than that. But then, of course, the way we do
it... Ezra also made a good point where it's like, it is a legitimately interesting question, but it's the way the movie goes about force-feeding you it. Like, hey, don't you care about this? Isn't this a mysterious, super mysterious mystery that you just need to know more about? It's like the movie doesn't let you naturally get curious about it at any point in either movie, honestly.
I do like how the opening of it, though, is kind of like it's a bit of the Hey Arnold origin story.
A little bit of Hey Arnold. Yeah. I would say Dragon. A little bit of a ripoff of Hey Arnold, if I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, obviously, Hey Arnold did it better. I'm not going to have any bones of contention there.
Oh, I'm just saying, Hey Arnold, I wouldn't be surprised if they at least took quote-unquote inspiration there, because it's very similar.
Right.
But
well, that's the thing. So basically, the reason we have this whole, the reason they're doing the parents angle, the reason we're kind of running with outside of just using as an in to do something, to approach the origin from a different angle, is basically using it as an excuse to alienate Peter Parker, but instead of making him kind of the classically kind of, basically this is where they realize if we're going to adapt Spider-Man in the modern era, we can't quite do like the nerdy Peter Parker thing, which again we've kind of done. We kind of
yeah, we can. It's called Tom Holland.
I know I was going to get. Yeah.
Sorry.
Basically, we get the Homecoming. We've reinvented that in a different way, where he's not necessarily ostracized because of intelligence, but we've ostracized him for other reasons, and that's the thing. So we've kind of. So the point we can't do in like the '60s route, and this is kind of like the rough transitional period before we get to a Holland. So that's kind of what they're learning the hard way in the way they're doing this.
Uh-huh.
It's like I do like the idea that kind of connects to the Lizard story. We'll break a little bit more of the Lizard side of it down later, but I like that what they're trying to do here is Peter Parker is trying to become whole, which of course parallels Kirk Connors. That's why he's got like the missing father on the brain, the missing parents of it all on the brain. It is kind of like if you grew up with that question, like my parents just left in the middle of the night one night, dropped me off the aunt uncles, and never came back. That is gonna, I imagine, that eat away at you a little bit. Does it warrant where we go with it? Probably not, but does it get as milked heavily as it does in the second movie? No.
Yeah. I mean, just the Uncle Ben of it all in this movie is just very, very rushed and very like, I don't even know. And then at one point he ends up in a wrestling arena, but it's not because he goes to the wrestling. Any thoughts on that whole stuff, Ezra?
Well, that kind of I kind of scratched my head when I saw that. He fell through the roof and ended up in the wrestling arena. I was wondering.
That was like
kind of
member berries for a different franchise.
Yeah, I was wondering if is this kind of like a callback to the Raimi movie, or is it just kind of not? I wasn't entirely sure, but I thought, okay. I mean, just because you show a wrestling match and Raimi had a wrestling match doesn't mean that now you match, what Raimi did. There's not even a bone saw. Bone saw. You gotta have bone saw to make the scene work.
Here's something that I actually appreciated with The Amazing Spider-Man 1 when it comes to the origin story. However, I do feel like by the end of the movie, they dropped the ball on it. The revenge subplot. I really wish they would have gone the full way with the revenge subplot and not just had it be like, oh, I'm Spider-Man now, so I'm just going to conveniently forget about Uncle Ben's killer, even though I never actually obtained him.
Well, here's the thing. I love I think one of the best parts of Amazing Spider-Man is the progression of Spider-Man's identity, in both physically and psychologically here, where he's, well, maybe not psychologically. Yeah, points like, I like how the costume progresses. Like, we're not quite to like the perfect rationale once we get to the MCU, but still, it's like, okay, he's building it piece by piece. At least we're seeing more of a logic to the costume than just like he has like a movie ready costume in the Raimi movies. It's a little more okay. He's building it up. I kind of buy the kid made it. Still doesn't look too good. Yes, but it look like a basketball, kind of. But it's anyway. My point is, I like the progression. Also, as you're speaking to Tiki, as an excellent point. Where again, I love the revenge crusade and how he gets called out on it by Captain Stacy, where he's saying, yeah, he's a vigilante. He's not, he's after his own. He's serving his own cause. He's not a hero. And again, I like that's why we don't really need to see like the mugger and everything. It's like he just lets it go. He lets go of the hate. Let's go of the revenge and the drive there. And that's what I'm saying. It's like basically all that fades away.
I feel like I feel like I needed at least one scene, because to me it just feels like it's left dangling. I'm not saying that the end resolution shouldn't have been that he could have let it go. I'm just saying that there's not really a cathartic moment where he realizes that letting go is the right choice. It's just the movie just kind of conveniently forgets about it. You know what I'm saying? Am I making any sense here?
A part of me wonders if they ever did a third movie, if perhaps we'd have that scene in there. But then again, there'd probably be like a Spider-Man 3 comparisons. We didn't even get this movie, so it's kind of a moot point, I guess. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah. So That's the thing. Point being, it all melts away once he saves his first save, which is the kid, which is reuniting the kid with his father, which is quite beautiful.
Sure.
But the thing about here's what the wrestling thing. I like that. I like with the wrestling nod because again, the comics and in the Raimi movie, he had the wrestling thing. That's why it's there. But I mean, the point being, like, yeah, we don't have the full Bonesaw of it or the Crusher Hogan, however you want to look at that. But I like he gets the idea for like the big eyes on the Spider-Man costume from the the decorations within the wrestling arena. That's kind of nice. Kind of gives a logic to that.
Yes.
Well, the Uncle Ben, though, I like how messy and raw the Uncle Ben thing was, and like the regret that Peter had. It was a memorable argument they had in their last exchange. They're just yelling at Uncle Ben. He's just really unhappy with him, and he's just like giving like the big argument, like your father was a great man. Like, no, he wasn't. He left me here, which again is a valid point. And after they've been building such a nice relationship in the movie, it was like, oh god, and again like this heated argument. I got to admit, though, in retrospect, though, it's such an innocent mistake that Peter makes, though, where he forgot to pick up Aunt May that kind of brought all of this on.
Yeah, no. Here's the thing. Like, I'm with you, Dragon. I do like how we make Uncle Ben a little bit more raw, a little less, like saint-like the Cliff Robertson version. But at the same point, I feel like the actual death itself is just like it's just squandered. Honestly.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like you don't have the dying. The dying moment is again. That's what I'm saying. It's like messy and raw, where it's like, oh god, Uncle Ben just kind of dies unceremoniously. But again, Peter's just kind of living with that versus like kind of the big destiny moment of the Raimi movies. Which again, if you're comparing the two, Destiny moment has all the magic in the world applied to it. You can't help like having like the one tear fall down your face when you're watching that Raimi moment.
Sure.
I'm saying like it's kind of, but yeah,
it's just everything about the death in the Amazing movie just feels like it's messy. It's more realistic, sure, but it lacks any sort of pathos to it.
I mean, the only pathos to really glean from is like Uncle Ben trying to stop the gunman. That's like the one thing you do have from it. But I hear your point though.
Well, here's the thing, like where I kind of stand with this, comparing these two scenes of the Raimi Uncle Ben death and the Mark Webb Uncle Ben death is where with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, it feels very, I guess it just feels very modern. Like it was definitely a product of its time. The way, they had that kind of handheld shot of when Peter realizes that Uncle Ben is laying on the ground, right? It feels very, how do I say this? It just doesn't feel like the type of thing that is really, really impactful, I guess, in true. Because with the Raimi movies, I'm kind of losing my train of thought with the Mark Webb version, but with the Raimi movies, I know this because I love the scene and kind of how it builds up to the death of this criminal in the Raimi film. It's just cinematic. It's like you have Uncle Ben's death, and that just builds into this huge, just cinematic, just showcase of his powers and the music especially, and just Peter as a character growing. I mean,
everyone makes fun of Tobey Maguire crying, man, but you can't deny the raw emotion.
The moment that brings the tear down the face, man, is the moment where Uncle Ben's hand goes limp.
Exactly.
That's the moment. That's like what we're lacking here. And the other thing is, okay, in the Raimi films, it's kind of classical here, the way they do it. Like the way basically, I remember if you look at the comic, it was basically like Uncle Ben was like shot in in a home invasion. Essentially, that's what had like a burglar inside the house, and Peter wasn't there. And of course, I think we all defer to Raimi because it's such a more dramatic and awesome way that went down. And here's the thing: so in the Amazing Spider-Man, the way that happens is it's not the death itself is not Peter's fault, which is kind of a problem. basically Uncle Ben chasing after him, that's where the fault lies on Peter. So basically Peter dwelling in the past is kind of what he sets the dominoes off, which just feels like it's like friend of a friend of a friend versus like you didn't stop the guy, where it's like, he saw the guy, he took the milk from the guy, but didn't necessarily mean like, he could have stopped him. He's from the other side, the man had a gun. I mean, there's a difference, there's I don't know.
Yeah, there was no thanks moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, the milk was kind of the thanks, but you know what I mean.
It's a weak sauce thanks.
You're
though.
right.
It's
It is a weak sauce.
Because
It
with
is a
the
weak
thanks
sauce.
moment, you need a moment where it's like he's literally just being like, "Oh, thank you," because now because of you, I am getting away.
Yeah.
And now with the milk, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hear it.
And can we also just talk about how annoying the whole like not choice responsibility is?
Okay, so you mean the whole we're not just saying great power.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing that bugs me. Okay, that was originally in the movie.
I mean, it's better than the MCU outright refusing to acknowledge Uncle Ben's existence. I'll give you that much. But
so here's the thing that bugs me, because they had it in the movie and they would have had it in the perfect place. It was supposed to be on the phone message at the end of the movie. They cut it out.
Yeah, I know.
It's like that, and then basically they did work it in, but it was in the alternate ending of 2, where his father comes back from the dead, and he tells him great power comes great responsibility. Really, that's what I'm saying. They keep editing it out. They keep getting rid
of All right. Anything else?
Yeah, one last thing I want to hit on, the Oscorp of it all.
Oh boy. Oh god. Gives me a headache just thinking about it, honestly.
Well, I want to talk about the pros of the Oscorp thing. Here's what I really like about the Oscorp. This is something we did differently than we did in the Raimi film.
Okay.
So, I think it was a really smart call to economize, kind of like what Spectacular Spider-Man the animated show did with Spider-Man, where basically we've kind of made Oscorp the root of all evil, the manufacturer of all the Spider-Man villains, which essentially is what we do here, also kind of the birthplace of Spider-Man, where we build up Osborn as, I know it doesn't pay off, but I'm saying I can respect the build-up though in the first movie. Like they had things worked out, this would have been amazing. Hence the title.
I am not a big fan of the homogenized every villain comes from Oscorp angle. I mean, I understand that they've done it in the comics before. That's fine. But I feel like one of the big things that makes the Raimi movie stand out, even 3, is the fact that every villain has their own story to tell. Every villain has a pathos and an arc to them and a tragic backstory. Yeah. And I feel like by making literally every single villain a byproduct of Oscorp, you're just really diffusing that. Yeah, exactly.
Even Spider-Man.
But here's the thing, though. Here's the cool thing about that, though. If you're building up the Green Goblin as the archenemy of Spider-Man, you have him as like the author of all his pain, almost like a Moriarty factor, kind of built in with like, okay, this guy's literally the reason, like the reason you're Spider-Man, because he had the genetic super spiders.
The reason why the Sinister Six works so well is that they all have unique reasons for going after Spider-Man. Honestly, it's not just because there's a Moriarty pulling the strings. I mean, I think a Moriarty type situation works a lot better with Batman and the Joker, honestly.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, Dragon.
I don't think it's the right analogy, but look. Here's what I'm. In the Spectacular, okay, obviously they're not doing this in this movie, but like Spectacular Spider-Man, you have the villains that are still pretty diverse, but they're unified by Oscorp in their origin story, and then they get to do their own thing. They run the Spider-Man on their own. Then if like Spider-Man eventually finds out, like, okay, they're all connected by Oscorp. So that's kind of what I'm used to. So, but I kind of hear what you're saying on that, but still, it's just I kind of like it as the build-up to Oscorp in that regard. But here's the thing though. I like how we give logic to some of the iconic things with Spider-Man here, like the web shooters and we have web shooters because of the spiders that are in Oscorp. So not just there for like random genetic experiments. Like,
sure.
Okay, the spiders are part of like a genetic animal testing thing, which is why we have all the animal themes with the Spider-Man villains, at least with Electro, for example. Like the whole electric eel thing is yet again genetic testing on the animals at Oscorp, and now they have like a thing where we now have that's how we get the high tension webs and everything. And of course, we've talked about this too. We have web shooters for the first time in this movie. That's one of the big takeaways. We had that where we did not have them in the Raimi films, and that was a smart.
I mean, we have web shooters. I just don't feel like the web swinging in this movie, because most of it's done in first person. I just don't feel like it's conveyed in nearly as grand of a way. So I don't really care all that much about the web shooters, if I'm being honest.
I mean, the thing that bugged me though is he never runs out, because that's the whole reason you do that.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah, there's no the point of the web shooters is the tension that comes with it, and there was no tension. So to me, I barely even noticed a difference. I'm just being honest with you. Let's see though. I did have a what were we talking about? Oh yeah. So Dragon, I hear what you're saying about like the about how Oscorp kind of links everything together, but honestly, I feel like the MCU does the same sort of idea, but in a much more organic way, where with the MCU Spider-Man movies, every villain has a tie to Stark. Every villain, wants to get even with Stark, and that's their origin story. That's their origin point. But I feel like the difference is that not every villain is literally made in a lab. That's the difference there. I feel like, you know me, I'm not like I think I'm not a huge fan of the MCU Spider-Man movies, but I like Far From Home quite a bit. I thought it was an improvement, but I digress. So I just think that with Stark, there's an example of sort of a corporate entity looming over everything that doesn't feel like it's just very conveniently like, oh, here's you get a super villain power, you get a super villain power.
Sure.
Yeah, well, like Keaton's character. I mean, he was a product of Stark, but he wasn't like directly coming from Stark. He was just a result.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And then with Jake Gyllenhaal was basically he was tied to Stark, but by the same point, he was part of this much larger organization. All right, sure. I think we've made Dragon feel bad about his opinions for long enough.
Well, no, my point is, like, I hear you saying. All I'm going to say is, again, Spectacular, there is that connecting. Again, classically, there is that connecting thread. Here, we don't hit on that as well because they're not developing enough time to do something. They don't have the benefit of like doing a series of television or they don't have multiple movies. And again,
I when Stacy looks at Oscorp, all right, that's where it pushes it for me.
Well, again, she's always like, again, she's a lab assistant. She works. I'm saying I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have things connected to Oscorp. I think they didn't do it as subtly as it could have been done, but that's the problem. It's not as done as subtly, but I think it's there. You got to remember, most of like 75 to 80% of Spider-Man villains are created in a lab. Not all of them, but a number of them are.
But they're not all created in the same lab, though.
Again, depending on where you look, so that's not. I can't really fault it for like linking it all to Oscorp. I'm saying you're right.
Maybe I'm just making you. I think we're spending too long on this point.
Okay, the point being, anyway. So we'll agree to disagree. Moving on. Okay.
All right. What's next?
Let's talk about Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. So, how do we feel about the boy?
Oh, you ready for more divisive opinions, kids? I'll start with the positive. All right.
This is what they call the fireworks skits.
I love his Spider-Man. I think he makes a kick-ass Spider-Man. I really do. I honestly, I love the way he interacts with kids. I love the way that, like, I really feel like he's a great medium between kind of like the larger-than-life mythological Raimi Spider-Man and like kind of like the incompetent MCU Spider-Man. I say incompetent lovingly, but the MCU Spider-Man has a lot to learn. However, out of the three Peter Parkers, oh man, is Andrew Garfield miscast. I mean, I don't want to be shallow here, guys, but the fact that he's attractive, like ridiculously, like model-worthy attractive is one thing. That's it's fine, whatever. Make him awkward and alternative, I guess, whatever. The fact that Andrew Garfield, like he looks so old in these movies, man. It's so distracting. And I know Toby also looked old in these movies, but at least he graduated high school in the first, 15 minutes of the first movie.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not far off from where you are, T. Because again, I would absolutely agree that Andrew Garfield was a phenomenal Spider-Man. When he's in my favorite parts of the
I'm
whole
not
series.
knocking you for that. Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, because my favorite parts of the whole franchise are when he's in the costume. I'm not joking. Especially with the second movie. All my favorite parts of the movie, the whole reason I watch that movie are for those Spider-Man parts. And again, him helping the kid out is one of, like, all that is fantastic. Helping the kid with the wind turbine who comes back later at the end. But yeah, Andrew. Here's the thing. I hear your point on Andrew Garfield. His performance as Peter Parker is not. His scenes with Gwen are great. I think the scenes with the whole chemistry and the whole thing with Gwen
Sure.
Stacy is good. It's just saying, like, comparatively to Peter Parker, it's like it's always the weird. Tom Holland always felt like he was like the perfect splicing of the two performances, where he was like kind of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in the suit, and Tobey Maguire's like kind of Peter Parker outside. So it's kind of a combination in regard to that. Where again, it's kind of this weird anomaly where you have Tobey Maguire's kind of he's the great dramatic side of Peter Parker, where again we try to infuse the humor of Spider-Man. You mix them, you get the kind of best of both worlds down the line. Where yeah, that's the age thing didn't bother me, but what bothers me on the rewatch with the age is the fact that if he's going to graduate in the next movie, what's the point of putting him in high school?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why it doesn't bother me. It only bothers me in retrospect. Well, yeah, he's going to graduate. Why didn't we just have him graduate? Why can't we get away from this?
Oh
If you want to put him in high school,
boy.
fine, but do it with the younger guy, all right? Which we've done. That's what I'm saying. It's weird.
So I just there's something that comes across as very cocky and very like improv-y about the way that Garfield delivers his lines as Peter Parker. And I feel like if Peter Parker should be anything, it shouldn't be cocky. That is like that is the opposite vibe that I want to get from Peter Parker in
Well,
any situation.
he's cocky at the wrong point in time. I've seen a cocky Peter Parker that really worked. The '90s Spider-Man had basically a Peter Parker who was like he's getting like the raw end of life. Like J. Jonah Jameson's always yelling at him, but he has like a quippy remark when he leaves Jameson's office. Like he's cocky in that regard, but not cocky in front of the Phantoms.
Gotcha.
That sort of thing. He could have, but again, that's a Peter Parker post high school though. That's the difference. Like he's not the kid. He's not the wet behind the ears kid. Which is kind of what they're trying to do here. I think that's what you're kind of speaking to. Like he's not seasoned enough to get away with being cocky.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even in the best scenes, like the scenes with Gwen Stacy, I just honestly feel like, especially in the second movie, uh, Mark Webb just really lets them go off the leash, and it just kind of becomes really cringy how much they're improvising off each other, and like, oh, look at us, we're so cute, and we're a couple in real life, so we have this amazing chemistry. And I feel like the chemistry in the first movie is genuine, absolutely fucking genuine. Like, honestly, some of the best chemistry in any superhero movie. That honestly is like one of the main reasons that lifts this entire franchise up is the chemistry between Peter and Gwen in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. And Mark Webb knew what he had, and he hoarded the hell out in the sequel to the point where I was just, by the time it was over, I was annoyed by it. By the time we were getting to the whole like, oh, well, you can save people in Europe. I'm sure you need to save people. It's like, oh god, this is not my Spider-Man. I don't like this. I don't know. Ezra, thoughts?
Thoughts on what? Because we're talking about a lot here.
Well, it's basically Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man as a whole.
Just Garfield in general.
Oh boy. In short, I think he was miscast, basically for the reason that you stated before, TK. I think I don't feel that it's Peter Parker. There are certain qualities that Peter Parker should have. And usually you can pick up on these things just by spending a few minutes with the character, or just a few seconds. Just an action, how they respond to something in 5 seconds. And I just was not picking up on that with Andrew Garfield. What's a good example here? Like with Tobey Maguire in the first in the first few minutes we see him, he's walking up the steps to the museum, and he thinks Mary Jane's waving at him, and he dorkily waves back at her, and then she's not waving at him at all.
I can't buy that from Garfield.
Yeah, he just gets this look of oh wait, and just rolls his eyes and keeps on walking. It's like there needs to be a certain element of, I guess, relatability on a really kind of dorky level, or because everyone makes those kind of stupid mistakes. It's not just the nerds, and it's just relatable. It makes you love him. And Andrew Garfield, for one, didn't really have those types of relatable moments. He had like his exchange with Gwen in the hallway in the first movie. That was kind of cute and it was dorky, but it wasn't really relatable.
It's all meet cute. That's the thing. It's all meet cute. There's
honestly,
nothing
when he's
awkward
with the Stacy family, that's when he feels like a high school kid. And I think it's when they're getting what they want out of him. But again, when he's actually in high school, it just doesn't quite meld. And it doesn't feel like he's miscast. It just feels like they should have retooled the movie to he's out of high school. If we're gonna have it as is,
Uh-huh.
So that's basically where I stand.
But to the Spider-Man of it all, though, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Especially we get to the second movie, like he becomes Spider-Man from page to screen. We fix the costume, we make him look actually like Spider-Man, like full tilt with the white eyes and everything. We have like a better Hans Zimmer thing. Hey, I want to interject this real quick. Music. How do we feel in the music? Because there's two different scores. You get the James Horner thing in the first movie. You got Hans Zimmer in the second movie. What do you guys think?
Oh, God. I mean, the music in this franchise is one of the real weak points in the franchise. I don't want to be mean here, but it just does not come together. And honestly, I think a big part of that is because, we do have the iconic Danny Elfman music for the Raimi movies. And so it is going to stand in its shadow. But honestly, I feel like the big problem is that there's no hummable melodies here. There's no real, like, of course, like, with Avengers, we have the big, like, da 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 da. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. And, like, here, there's just nothing like that. It's just kind of a bunch of, like, weird horn sections. And,
I think they got closer to something like that. I think it gets closer to a hummable theme with Hans Zimmer. But even then, outside the main Spider-Man theme, there's not much special going on in the movie.
Honestly, one of the things I like about Hans... Go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I was going to say that with the Danny Elfman score, I mean, Spider-Man has a really hummable theme, but so does the Goblin, so does Doc Ock, so does Sandman, even though that wasn't Elfman, but all of the villains have really hummable themes too.
Electro, not so much.
Yeah, no, it's... no.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's kind of your point there. Where again, like we have a whole bunch of
I will defend the Electro score because I appreciate what they did with it. Like I appreciate the bombastic element of like making like the voices in his head and like I don't know, like there's something there. It doesn't work, sure, but I feel like he was trying something with that.
I'm gonna segue to your favorite part, Tiki. Okay. Okay, so here's
the
biggest moment for me when watching The Amazing Spider-Man. There was a really cool moment that was set up, and here's the thing: score-wise, I was really looking forward to, and then you kind of realize, oh yeah, isn't Danny Elfman's not doing the score for this movie? We're doing the Crane thing, and we have this thing where he's gonna swing to Oscorp again before we break down like what's wrong with the Crane thing. But it's just the fact that he's gonna start swinging. So before, like, seriously, okay, Spider-Man's about to swing into action, New York supporting him, okay, and then we zoom out, like, he's about to make the dash for, then we should hear the Danny, I'm hearing the Danny Elfman score, and like, oh no, it's going to be like the sun shining, like, it's like, oh, where's the, I want to hear the action theme, man, where is it? Like, oh, wrong movie. I still think it's BS how he got shot, too. What? That's the thing, they put a bunch of really weird third act stuff leading up to the Crane scene, where, like, he's fighting the cops, who are supposed to be going after the lizard, and then he gets shot.
Is the weirdest thing in the third act, not the lizard turning the entirety of New York into lizard people.
Well,
that's not
does,
the weirdest
though.
thing in the third act.
I'm used to that. That's what he usually does, though.
All right, fair enough. Can we? Yeah, let's break down the cranes. Ezra,
and how you want to do it? Yeah.
Ezra, do you remember the cranes?
I remember that the dad who was basically operating the
Yeah.
entire scene. The
C.
guy
Thomas
from,
Howell.
from ET, yeah.
Yeah. And the Reverse Flash.
Do I remember the cranes? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. Do you remember how it goes? The setup for it, which it sounds like you do. Okay.
Well, yeah. So
I just think.
Yes.
I just think, and I have always thought this, and I remember Spoonie made a big point about it back in the day on his vlog with his brother, and I entirely agreed. It is one of the most fucking over-the-top, ridiculous things. Like, I appreciate the sentiment. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a cynical asshole. I appreciate the sentiment of it. Maybe if Spider-Man needed to get across one crucial leap and he needed the one crane and then the father shows up with it, that would have worked. However, I don't buy this whole, like, the entire unionized crane drivers district of New York comes together for Spidey in this one crucial moment because the dad saw him on TV, and there's no way logistically that just Dragon, help me out here. It's too big of a plot hole. It's
here's
like
the thing.
It's a plot.
I can buy that the father gets the New York to rally behind Spider-Man. What I can't buy is that all those cranes just happen to be there. That's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I can buy the father being there. I can't buy the entire unionized crane authority or whatever they're called. You know, I can't.
Well, I'm saying I
can't buy them.
They all happen to be in the midst of construction at that moment. If not, then they'd have to be able to get their cranes up there like that. Like
the way that I've always read the scene is that the father literally like got on the phone and was like, "We need some fucking cranes," and was like. It just like called up like how? No, I don't care if your wife's asleep. I don't care if she's 8 months pregnant. You gotta get out of bed right now and drive your crane, Hal. Spider-Man with you.
See, because that's so ridiculous, I was just read it that they all happen to be like, there's that much construction going on in New York right now, which I can't buy. Like, that much? I mean, all those cranes just in one.
I mean, knowing what I know about construction just in cities like Anaheim and Orlando, I could buy that there's that many cranes in New York, if I'm being honest.
I know, that's the way I've always
Well, here's the thing. Because do you guys know how they demolish buildings in New York?
With loud noise. No, I have no idea what it would be.
How they demolish skyscrapers? Well, they don't demolish them. They take the buildings apart the same way they put them together, piece by piece. And so I guess if they're tearing down a really big skyscraper, they might have that many cranes. Just take all the pieces apart, you know. Otherwise, I guess I don't even know if they had to have that many cranes for a job like that. I mean, I don't really know why you need that many cranes.
It's too many cranes. That's the fundamental issue. There's just too many cranes.
That's the problem. There's too many cranes.
It's not that there are.
The ad said there'd only be a few cranes.
Okay, so point being, if I just speaking of Spider-Man in New York, if I can circle back to what I really want, the positive side of this, not the crane things, the positive side is Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. So again, like we have him from page to screen, he's in a better costume. We have like at least not an Elfman theme, but an upgraded theme. We have like he's lighthearted, he's quippy, he's the New Yorker Spider-Man when he's in the suit. I love the day in the life montage. You know, we see him like, you know, kind of like he gets sick with a cold and he's helping the convenience store clerk. You know, he's being tarred and feathered when he's like that montage is so great. Of course, the key point of that montage, he befriends a bullied kid, man. Tell me that he walks the kid home as the classiest Spider-Man thing I've ever seen. You know, he's putting out fires, wearing firefighters' hats. It doesn't get any more New York than that, man. There's some magic. Whenever he's in the suit, man, he came alive and he really was doing right by the suit. And of course, best moment in the franchise. Again, butchered in the marketing, but let's just take that off the table for a moment. Best part of the entire franchise, the return to stop the Rhino at the end, where he thanks the kid, thanks the kid in the Spider-Man costume, and the subtle moment that always gets me and gets me choked up a little bit is like when Spider-Man returns, and of course he's been gone for a while. The kid's there in peril, and they have this cop looking up, and you don't see Spider-Man, you see the smile on his face, you hear the hope in the air, like, oh God. You hear the web sling, and then there he is. It's like, oh my God, Spider-Man's back. It's something beautiful, you know. It's the arc, and the whole franchise is built upon the arc of a kid finding his inner hero, and he gets to inspire New York. And none of this makes his life any easier. Like, what life gets tough for him. He loses his girlfriend, he loses his uncle, he loses everyone around him. But you know what? Like, life does not get any easier. But he's back, and it's like the Spider-Verse of it all. Like Spider-Man, he always gets back up. He always gets back up, and he's going to be there to save the day. It's such an uplifting, wonderful message.
Mm.
Yeah. You guys want to hear a really neat Easter egg?
What do you got?
Sure.
So I was looking up this crane scene from the Amazing Spider-Man, and it turns out that the dad who basically organizes this entire crane rally has his own Facebook page. It's called Joey the Crane Driver, the real hero of Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh my God. That's awesome. All right, you know what? Because of that, I'm going to completely legitimize the crane scene. The crane scene is awesome now.
And 22 people liked it. Probably one for each crane driver that was there that night.
God.
Right. Well, that's okay. That's awesome. Again, just on the whole, again, I can never reject the Amazing Spider-Man 2 because it got things so right with bits like that, you know. Because again, if it's like it's all triumphant and stuff, it's a great ending. So, yeah. Unless you guys have anything else you want to add just about Spider-Man on the whole, we'll just jump in.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the supporting characters. It's going to fire through some of the supporting characters. So again, we kind of spoke to the chemistry of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely blows the Raimi's Mary Jane stuff out of the water. Let's be honest. I mean, of all terms, we're comparing.
Yeah, it's the one thing that is inarguably better about this franchise.
I will say a lot of nice things about the Raimi movies, but Mary Jane Spider-Man, there were issues there. Let's be honest, there were issues.
Yeah. If you look at the one of the behind the scenes clips with Kirsten Dunst, she was saying how, you know, Mary Jane, this is before the movie was released, she was just doing press junkets for the movie, and she was saying how, you know, Mary Jane's not, you know, the typical damsel in distress, but that's exactly what she is.
Yeah, she absolutely is. In every movie. She's literally a bargaining chip in Spider-Man 2.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so...
all right.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't have to talk too much more about Emma Stone. I mean, I feel like Garfield and yeah. They have great chemistry. Emma Stone might be the single best cast person in the whole franchise.
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe talk about Captain Stacy, the other Stacy, as it were, Dennis Leary.
So Captain Stacy is quite good in The Amazing Spider-Man. I feel like he does add a little bit of an air of tension, although unfortunately I feel like Homecoming was like, hey, hold my beer, we're going to do another father reveal, but it's going to be a lot more epic.
Yeah.
However, I cannot take Captain Stacy seriously in Amazing Spider-Man 2. All the Captain Stacy ghost stuff is ridiculous.
Okay, let me talk about the ghost thing. Okay, I defend like 25% of the ghost. Okay, here's the thing about the ghost. So, I like the idea.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Here's the thing about the ghost. The ghost thing is like the logic behind the ghost thing is that it's mainly what you get in the third act, which is what I like about it. Where the idea, it's like a psychological spider sense where he knows something bad's going to happen to her, so he's remembering Captain Stacy. The problem is when we do it all throughout the movie, especially in the beginning, which kind of compels them to break up.
Oh yeah,
that's the problem. But again, when we get to the third act, that I can buy. Like, oh god, like in this moment, imagine if you didn't see Captain Stacy until that moment. I think it would have played a lot better. Like, oh god, he's thinking of Captain Stacy right now, which basically is like his last words, like, don't get my daughter anything.
If you didn't see him until that moment, it wouldn't have played as a ghost at all. It would have played as a memory. And so we wouldn't have all the Captain Stacy ghost scenes.
Exactly.
They should have done an American Werewolf. They should have done what an American Werewolf in London did and just have him decay every time he sees him.
Well, that's a little morbid.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's
Like, oh, I'm dying of lizard claws. No, but seriously, reflecting
Oh God.
on said death, though, again, it's like, yeah, he was a great kind of mentor in in kind of in demonstrating, drawing the line between vigilante and hero for Spider-Man. That's a big crux of like what was really cool about the reinvention within Amazing Spider-Man, and that was, literally,
Certainly did a hell of a lot did in Spider-Man 3.
oh, he did indeed. Gavin says he only had one good scene in Spider-Man 3.
The one good scene in Spider-Man 3.
I should probably redact that in that he only had one scene. He only had really one scene, and he just got popped up and like hey, what's going on?
Good.
No, I mean, Maguire had some really good acting when he's reflecting back, imagining Uncle Ben's murder. That was kind of a good moment. Where Captain Stacy's dropping the bomb on him, like the guy got away, and he's thinking, "Oh God, I don't know, that was a decent. I'd like them, but anyway, moving on."
All right, fair enough. It's just when I think of Captain Stacy, I just think of my name's Eddie Brock, sir, and I'm dating your daughter.
Yeah, that's the thing. He only has two scenes in the movie. That one sucks. The other one actually was a decent scene for James Cromwell. Okay. No, but seriously,
All right.
but yeah, his death scene was tragic, and again, a great foreshadow for Gwen's fate for sure. It was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Should we talk about Aunt May?
Yes.
Okay. Can I just say that the underwear sheriff bit might be the most annoying bit of improv in Hollywood history? Whatever, laundry sheriff. I did cringe.
I think you get a little too offended by laundry sheriff, if you ask me.
The thing about Sally Field, Aunt May, is that I feel like she's well cast. I feel like I buy her as the character, but man, she just nags, and she doesn't have any of the charm of Rosemary Harris. She doesn't have any of the clever reinvention of Marissa Tomei. I understand that, a big part of her character is kind of like coming to terms with knowing that Peter is Spider-Man throughout these movies. But I don't know, man. And again, this is very much kind of comparing it to the Raimi movies, but there's just not a ton of likability there. There's not a ton of motherly warmth there.
Well, here I respect the idea that there was a strained relationship there. She, again, like Peter is from Ben's side of the family, and this kid was just dropped on their doorstep, and she was kind of forced into the role of motherhood. So there's always been a little bit of a divide, and of course, when Ben gets killed off, things get even more strained for on many fronts. That I respected, but yeah, this is kind of the intermediary step before we get like a true reinvention of May. This is like, okay, Aunt May's doing stuff, so she's doing a nursing thing in the second movie. Aunt May's trying to be proactive, which again we do better once we get to Aunt May is like she's running like a blipped kind of prevention, like a benefit fund of some kind, like the blipped support fund in Far From Home. It's like baby steps getting to that point, Yeah.
Flash Thompson is done rather well.
Yes, he is. I mean, bear in mind we've only had 3 stabs at Flash Thompson, but he is the best by far. Yes. I could buy this
Doesn't
kid.
Have a ton of screen time, but
I could buy this kid in the Venom suit. Honestly, this kid. I think again, bear in mind we don't do a lot with him, but still, this guy he kind of captured what Flash Thompson's all about. He came around, becomes friends with Peter Parker, and he's a Spider-Man fan. You know what? Kid, yeah. I could see him in have the militaristic Venom suit. It could work. It could work.
Right. Anyone else we're missing?
Uncle Ben, but I mean, we talked about him a little bit already, but just to hit on one thing with him. So again, I like Martin Sheen in the role. I thought he was great casting. If you're going to do Uncle Ben again, you can't do much better. Like, hey, we got Martin Sheen. That's awesome. I like the father connection. That was really those earlier scenes where he's like, they had a really good back and forth. You're a really good dad, Uncle Ben. Like, that's a really heartwarming scene. And again, as you said earlier, this is the all business version of Uncle Ben, where he gets stern with Peter. He calls him out. He's very blue collar in that sense. Because he came in the sort of that ridiculous basketball board thing where I hate the idea that Peter got in trouble because he broke the basketball thing. Where how you should sue the school? That's not Peter's responsibility. That was an unsafe basketball. And why is he in trouble? Anyway, the point being, all that happens, and he kind of left him the again, as I mentioned before. I wish they left the great power within the phone message, but it is what it is. But Martin Sheen was excellent casting.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to the villains, I guess, right?
Yes, on to the main course, the villains.
All right. I'm going to get mean here, but I really... Yes, it is because of the lack of build-up. Yes, I admit that, but you know what? I also hate the look of the lizard, and not just because he doesn't wear the lab coat the whole movie, though that does piss me off, but I just hate the fact that he literally doesn't have a snout. Characterization-wise, it's fine. Like, to me, it's pretty much like the most vanilla lizard origin story that you're gonna get. Like, okay, he's lost the arm, he wants to restore the arm. That's about it. But I don't know, man. It would have been so much more powerful if we would have actually gotten the Dylan Baker lizard in a Raimi Spider-Man 4. I mean, it almost makes me wish that we could get a Dylan Baker lizard in an MCU like multiverse movie or something, because I really think Dylan Baker got screwed. But this lizard, I mean, like I said, writing-wise, it's fine, but I hate the look. I think he looks really stupid.
Okay, let me weigh in here. So also take again, Dylan Baker, really good in Hunters. Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just getting it in there. Just getting it in there. Anyway, so Lizard.
I mean, I'm currently watching Legend of Korra and rewatching Last Airbender, so I'm pretty tied up at the moment.
Yep. Anyway, so Lizard. Here's the thing. I think the Lizard as a villain, like as the next villain, was a good choice. But obviously, big shame it wasn't Dylan Baker in a Raimi movie. That would have been the best version of that idea. Again, I like the parallel they're going for here. Like we're basically people trying to become whole. That's essentially what we're doing there with him and Peter Parker. A little, I like the almost Batman Begins as kind of theme with Peter Parker. He's kind of bouncing around these father figures. We have Uncle Ben. You got again, had it been done better, Kirk Connors, and you have Captain Stacy. Here's the problems. Here's what you're speaking to. Here's where they can steer it wrong. One, going with the Steve Ditko snoutless route. Because their logic was, well, Steve Ditko, the way he drew him when he first appeared, he didn't have a snout, and the main reason they didn't do the snout is because they were afraid he wouldn't be able to talk with the snout, which I think is BS. Like, come on, guys. It's a giant lizard. Who cares? Here's the thing: if they're trying to pull the Ditko thing, it's like, guys, it changed for a reason because God loves Steve Ditko. But you know what? Some designs are a work in progress. The lizard was one of them. It's Killer Croc can get away without having a snout. Lizard with lizard in the name, not so much. And here's the thing that really ticks me off about the lizard. We only got him like 2 shots of him in the lab coat. Why couldn't we keep the lab coat on him for like more of the movie?
Man, I hate that. Yeah,
because he looked awesome.
Because it's more realistic, and a savage lizard monster would just tear the lab coat off. Fuck you.
Like Fuck you. Lizard without.
Fuck you and your realism.
Like, here's the thing. I'll give you a realism in that. Okay, he doesn't have the pants and everything because he turned into a lizard, but again, he has the jacket on. That's all we need. We need something. We need a lab coat, man. We need something indicative of that character. It's like that's the coolest he looked in the movie when he had the lab coat on. So here's the thing.
I would say that the fight in the school is probably the best fight scene throughout both of the movies.
Yeah, I guess, you're right. That was probably the best fight. I think it's the best scene in Amazing Spider-Man, honestly, in the first movie. I think it's like the high school fight as a whole, like when he finds, again, I think it's stupid how he found out he was Spider-Man, like his name was on the camera, like, come on, Peter. But I do like this. That fight itself is really cool. And again, the big point of it all, to demonstrate if villains found out who he was, he would be putting people he cares about, like Gwen Stacy, in danger. So that's a good idea. And again, it's a good fight. And the old Stan Lee cameo of it all. It's a lot of fun. It's a great sequence within the film. But here's the problem. That scene ended with a really important deleted scene. They basically cut out all of the interesting stuff about Kirk Connors. Like, they had stuff filmed. It still wasn't enough, but they had more interesting stuff. And that's the thing. We basically, at the end of the day, because we cut out all these important scenes, like like there was a scene where he was bonding with Peter after the death of Ben, and which is a really good scene where he says like, "Tell me about your uncle. Your father spoke him. He's a blue collar guy." That would have explained the bond and everything. And also, we had a scene with his son where again, big key point of Kirk Connors as a character, has a family, has a son and a wife. Didn't do any of that. And when we take these things away, when we sand this away from the character, all we have is the bare minimum, which is he's the plot. The lizard is the plot of the movie, and he's fleshed out before he's plot before he's fleshed out. And he works like just he's the bare minimum of okay, he works for the movie. We've kind of gleaned what the character's all about, and he's trying to turn people into lizards. He's doing his stuff. I mean, Reese Ifans, the guy who plays him, he's a solid choice as an actor. Again, no Dylan Baker, but he's a solid choice. He conveys the scenes well, but it just hurts that. Here's the thing that hurts. A very simple thing I want from Kirk Connors.
Dragon, time, Dragon. Come on.
All right. Just I wish I knew why the arm mattered. Okay.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm just like I want to get this under an hour and a half, and you're just kind of going on a whole soliloquy here. So we need to be conscious here. We still have like
not like
three
the rest
other
are going to take
go
a lot of time until we get to the Green Goblin. Let's be honest. So, Rhino.
Is there anything else you want to say about the arm?
No, I got nothing about the arm. It's fine.
Okay. Sandy, anything about the lizard?
I wish he had a snout, and I wish he had a lab coat. That's all I had to say.
All right. So yeah, you're right, Dragon. The villains in Spider-Man 2 are not going to take as long. Let's start with the Rhino, and all I can say about the Rhino is it looks like Paul Giamatti's having fun.
I mean, comparatively, the Rhino turned out best out of all the villains in Spider-Man 2. You really should. Seriously, though, I mean, he's a one-off villain, which we've always wanted to see in a Spider-Man, which we finally done proper in Homecoming.
We wanted to see a Rhino action scene in a cold open.
Yeah.
Specifically, at least I wanted that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You got a one-off of a villain and kind of have it paid off at the end with him in costume. So we got a one-off, and he was the only one vaguely. He was only his suit is connected via Oscorp. So again, he's even there. You have a little bit of what you want there too. It's a little bit of everything.
And genuinely, that is another one of the better action sequences in the series, with Spider-Man doing all the quips and whatnot.
Exactly.
But yeah, man, Rhino, like, not much to that character, really. He's kind of like the underliner of Spider-Man villains.
But that's not a problem. He doesn't need to have a lot, though. Again, we got our one-off villain. We did it through the Rhino, which is kind of a crowd pleaser. It's a shame we spoiled it all in the marketing. That's the thing. If it's not in the marketing, would have been no slam dunk.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk Electro.
Oh boy. So here, okay, let me get on my Electro soapbox here. Okay, so I'm keeping it simple. Electro, their heart was in the right place. On paper, the idea is sound. It's just they ended up way too broad, and it was a waste of Jamie Foxx. I love the idea.
God.
I love the idea of Spider-Man saving Max Dillon, and it builds kind of a trust that makes Max Dillon a Spider-Man fan. It leads to a great scene. The beginning of the scene is great, where Spider-Man's trying to talk him down, trying to help him out. Then, of course, we had the Oscorp connector. Okay, fell into the vat of the Electric Eels. They're kind of connected in that route. And like all that's great, but then we get all this ridiculous stuff. Okay, it's his birthday. We have the music. We have there's just not much to him aside from society treat him like he was invisible. Like there's nothing to this character outside. Like he should have just wanted revenge. It should have been a revenge on Oscorp story. Like would have tied into everything naturally. It was like Oscorp screwed me over. I want him dead. Would have worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, just like you said, just how broad and over the top he is. And also, it really doesn't help that he drops out of the movie for a large chunk of time.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. It's just a very uneven character all around. Effects-wise, it's not great. It's kind of like vaguely Dr. Manhattan-esque, and I know it's lifted from the comics. I just don't think it looks great live action. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it looks better than like if they would have adapted the original Electro suit, but I still don't think it looks great.
I still hope if the MCU does Electro, I want him to go with like a nod to the classic suit. I want to see him in the green and yellow. I think it'd be awesome.
I'm not a fan of that suit, bro.
No, I'm
really
saying they don't have to
not.
do the mask and everything. I'm saying that's kind of like just put him in a green suit, kind of like the Eve Spectacular did, kind of a nod on it. And the point being, it could maybe.
They really they hit it out of the park with Mysterio. I'll give them that.
They did.
That's what I'm
Absolutely,
saying.
they
I
did.
don't put it past.
Yes.
They might be able to find a way to make it work.
But I actually like Mysterio's design, though. That's the difference. Mysterio had a badass design. Electro looks stupid.
I'm saying I've seen some cool versions of Electro. They've made that costume work, or at least made an in between this suit and that suit.
All right.
Anyway,
just saying the lightning bolt mask, man.
I'm saying they're not
You can never sell
like,
me on the lightning bolt mask.
I'm saying like the way they've done it is like when they revamped him, like they made his head electrical, and therefore has like a he has a yellow electric head instead of a blue electric head, and that's how they get away with it.
Right.
Anyway.
All right.
Anyway, okay.
So, God, where do we want to start with the Green Goblins
well,
of it
let's
all?
start with Norman, because he's not in the movie long, because he's just going to go like that if we don't talk about him.
So, yeah, Sam Elliott. Hi, Sam Elliott. Bye, Sam Elliott.
What?
Wait, no, it's not Sam Elliott. It's another Sam.
No,
Chris Cooper. Chris Cooper.
How do you get... Where's Sam Elliott coming from?
Because Chris Cooper and Sam Elliott are both kind of like the, I don't know.
One has an iconic mustache.
Chris Cooper, I'm sorry.
Anyway, okay, so in retrospect, oh boy, there could have been a third movie with the Green Goblin and the Gwen Stacy fate of in retrospect. I think at the end of the day, they could have all the build up with the Green Goblin. They had enough villains. I think we just could have done all this in a third movie, but Norman Osborn, Chris Cooper, I think is good casting for Norman. Well, Sandy, what do you think of Chris Cooper as a Norman Osborn type?
I think I mean, if he's just laying there on the bed dying, it's fine. But I mean, I think they should have kept Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. And had he done that, I would think that Chris Cooper is not the best option just because of how old he is. If he was younger, then sure. But I don't know. I really wouldn't really be able to buy it, at least from where I can see. I wouldn't be able to buy him as the Goblin. Dan DeHaan, another story.
So
that's all he really does. He just lays in the bed and dies. That's all he does. It's a waste
yeah,
of
that's
talent.
definitely a problem. The problem is, you know, we built up Norman so much in the first movie to the point where I'm really excited to say, oh God, we're gonna see Norman, and they got Chris Cooper. This guy, I don't know, they're probably gonna go like the mutated Goblin route. I don't know, we'll see. So then, and he died. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. He technically doesn't die, but we'll never see that movie. So essentially he dies. Where they turn him into a severed head. It's a fate that we're never gonna see.
Oh yeah, like the Walt Disney Frozen head.
They
right?
literally did the Disney Frozen head thing to him. Yeah, it's I mean, like the one scene he did get though was they summarized kind of the love-hate relationship with Harry quite well. Where again he took himself out of Harry's life to save him from a fate that he's going to succumb to, and the whole sins of the father thing with the parallel between the two boys. Like again, I see the potential in Norman Osborn, but again, like we just killed him unceremoniously off like in his first scene, which is terrible. It's like, oh come on. Let's talk about Goblin Jr. Let's talk about Harry Osborn.
Yeah,
Also, guys, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a stickler for the time here, but I'm just legitimately worried if this goes on much longer, I'm not going to be able to like actually upload this onto my computer.
Remember, the time that's on there currently, you have to subtract half an hour.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
The time that's on there. Dragon, trust me, the time that's on there now is the recording. We've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes, all right? Trust me.
All right, fine. Okay.
So.
All right, so Dane DeHaan, he is, sounds like great casting for Harry Osborn, you know, matching our Andrew Garfield casting of Peter Parker. It seems like that could work. They had chemistry of history, you know, I thought. Lacking substance. No question there. It was lacking some substance. Like there, I wish we opened with the flashback they talked about shooting, where it's going to be them at like the funeral and everything. You're going to see them as kids and Norman Osborn looming over their shoulders. That would have been a really. They should have opened the movie with that instead of plane ride that we've already kind of seen before. Didn't do that. Yet again, we kind of, we're taking teeth from the Green Goblin story with the other foes, kind of like what we did with Spider-Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, a lot of subplots, a lot of logic holes with the whole in the Harry Osborn dilemma with the blood and everything. How do you guys feel about the blood scene?
Oh God. I mean, it pretty much just exemplifies just why this movie's so stupid. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, I love that as a classic Spider-Man scene where, okay, Spider-Man has to tell his best friend some bad news, and you see him on the outside hanging on the wall as his friend's being torn up inside. Out of context, good Spider-Man scene, but when you have that conversation, you really think about, like, yeah, he's warning him his blood could kill him. Pretty straightforward. Harry does not respond well to that, kind of stupid. But again, dramatically, kind of cool. In context, makes no sense. So, I mean, I like the Sandy, how do you feel with the Goblin suit?
Oh, okay, all right. First, I hate it. That's long and short of it. I really hate this Goblin suit. It looks like a giant. Because I know a lot of people really hate the Willem Dafoe suit, but at least the Willem Dafoe suit, it looks, it's not just some like Transformer. I don't even know how to say what I'm thinking here. It's the Willem Dafoe suit. It looks menacing. Dane DeHaan, he looks like it's with Willem Dafoe suit. He looks menacing. He looks creepy. You can see his actual mouth inside the mouth mask. That looks really creepy. You can see his eyes behind the yellow goblin eyes. That looks also kind of unnerving. With the Dane DeHaan thing, it looks like he's just some kind of weird hippie in a Transformers costume.
That's pretty much a good way to put it.
Well, I've always.
What?
Oh, go on.
I just said that's a good way to put it. He looks like a hippie in a Power Rangers costume.
Oh, a Transformer.
Dragon, go ahead.
Willem Dafoe looks like a Power Ranger.
Yeah, here's the thing. I like the practical application of the healing suit. I like that it had a reason behind it. I mean, again, it's like still doesn't maybe it doesn't quite measure up to the look of the Defoe thing, but again, I kind of liked where it was going. I still wish we had a Goblin suit that worked in the purple and the green, but like maybe purple in between the blades of the mechanized costume. I mean, there is something with it where, I mean, they have the cackle and everything where something doesn't go together with it. Like, I wish his face was greener with veins or something. Like, someone did, like, I respect what they were going for, but that we still have not cracked like how to do the Goblin without making him a giant mutant Goblin creature yet.
The thing is, I feel like they kind of disrespected the whole idea of the Green Goblin because, first of all, the Green Goblin is Norman Osborn, and it plays an integral part and with Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And the Goblin needs a mask. When I heard they weren't going to be giving this Goblin a mask, that kind of just put me off for the entire thing. Because the Goblin, he needs a mask. I mean, that's a part of what makes him the Goblin. If you're just putting some prosthetics on the guy's face that don't even, hide the identity of said character, and not to mention the fact it's Harry Osborn, it's not even Norman Osborn. I feel it's kind of a slap in the face to the character. And that combined with the fact they gave him 5-10 minutes of total screen time, the Goblin character, I just feel it's a real slap in the face.
I hated the company BS with Harry Osborn, like the whole his company's trying to working against him. Like we wasted wasted a lot of time with that stuff in that regard,
Yeah.
All right, let's use the Goblin to transition to the death of Gwen Stacy. Let's talk about the big kind of meat and potatoes of it all. So overall, let's simplify it here. How do you feel about how they pulled off the big iconic Spider-Man moment?
I don't have a lot to say about this other than that the moment itself is pulled off well. I just think it was a weird situation where they thought they had more movies to work with than they did. So they could have technically saved this for another movie, but then again, it turns out that Amazing Spider-Man 2 was in fact the last movie. So I'm in a weird conundrum where it's like it feels rushed, but by the same point, because Gwen Stacy is so good in these movies, I'm glad we have it, and I'm glad that it's as effective as it is. That doesn't mean it doesn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with it.
Well, I mean, I think it comes across as rushed because we did kind of like a little surprise attack at the end of the movie with that sort of thing, where it's okay. Well, we've saved the day. Gwen did not die, and then of course Goblin swoops in. Like, oh god, the goblins! That means Gwen's a goner. And so like, this is really the whole point of the sequel, that you would do the death of Gwen Stacy with it all. And again, I feel like we've gotten in the way of things with with everything kind of getting in the way of like maybe setting up the Goblin to build to the Gwen Stacy, but we had a few misdirects in there. I do like the misdirect of the whole "I love you" on the bridge. Like, okay, you think she's going to die on the bridge, but again, we kind of switch things up there. Okay, she does not die on the bridge, but she dies in the clock tower. They're trying to build on that theme of time and the idea that Spider-Man is always overscheduled. He never has enough time, and he's always like a little too late, which of course I think is a nice idea of a theme to kind of tie into the death of Gwen Stacy. Right? If he only got there a few seconds earlier, he could have saved her. And I love how the staging of that whole sequence, like setting in the clock tower, where like he's fighting the Goblin. He's trying one hand he's fighting the Goblin and with all these clocks and gears and everything, and the other hand he's trying to save Gwen. It's like it's such a tense, well structured sequence building to that iconic moment, which I think goes off flawlessly. So I think it's artfully done. I just think it's just worked in because of all the clunkiness that comes before. I think that's what kind of makes it feel a little compressed, a little maybe rushed. But I think I thought it was like done as well as they're ever going to get a shot at with Mark Webb as a director.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like in a whole mandated film, I think that was like the most Webb part of the movie. Okay, Webb's going to do this right, and I think he did it right.
Uh-huh.
All right, so I guess unless Sandy, you got anything else you want to talk about with the death of Gwen Stacy?
I thought it was probably one of the. It's definitely one of the most heartbreaking. The most heartbreaking scene in the two movies. And I think Garfield's performance in this scene is really. He really sells it. He's. I think it's one of his best scenes within the two movies.
And the mourning scene too, where he's just standing at her grave after all that time. That you feel the loss. I mean, really conveyed. That's probably Garfield's finest scene as Peter. Like one of his finest acting things is Peter Parker's all throughout that kind of like how he'd react to her death and the process and everything.
Yeah, I mean, Garfield, he's a great performer, but he wasn't right for the part. It was a real gut punch to lose Emma Stone's character, Gwen Stacy, because she was great. She was a huge improvement over the Sam Raimi Mary Jane character, and I would say that kind of sucked. But we never got a third movie, so it wasn't like we had to go through an entirely separate film without her. So, anyways.
Right.
Weren't they going to get who was going to be Mary Jane in the third movie? Do you know who was?
It was Shailene Woodley or something.
Yes,
Shailene
like Woodley. Yeah.
All right. So let's kind of talk about all the setup here. We're going to basically not a lot
to be fast about this.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it's not a lot to talk about because none of it happened, Tiki. So it's basically kind of listing off like here's kind of the plans they did have. Of course, there's the Sinister Six plan with Drew Goddard in the directing chair. Which they were really in a rush to do Sinister Six. Like instead of just going straight forward, which I think in the grant they would have saved themselves if they did like we're doing Amazing Spider-Man 3 next and then Sinister Six. But no, they had to jump right into Sinister Six with the franchising of it all. Like we gotta do our own cinematic universe, but we can't have Spider-Man in all the movies somehow. That was the most confusing thing. Like how the heck are they gonna do Sinister Six without Spider-Man?
Of course, let us forget the Aunt May movie.
Yeah, I still have no idea where their head was at on that Aunt May movie. I mean, unless it was like could be like a Lifetime movie. I had no idea where they were going with that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think part of the problem with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that it became so much of a product of setup that it really doesn't feel like its own movie. Go ahead, Ezra.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
It's like a
Oh,
lethal
sorry.
version of what happened with Iron Man 2. Where, like, what if Iron Man 2's fundamental flaw like took over too much of that movie? Where Iron Man 2 had a lot of Avengers setup in it. That was kind of why people had made it, like, labeled it so infamous. But it's
Exactly.
still, it works though. I mean, it's like, it's a little hand-fisted, but it doesn't kill the movie. Here it's like, okay,
It's
set up.
got some Iron Man 2's got some really good stuff in it, though. It's got, like,
Yeah.
a really good Robert Downey Jr. performance. It's got that great Walt Disney parallel with Howard Stark.
Mhm.
I mean, that's about it, but there's stuff.
And War Machine, that's pretty cool. And the whole Gendy Tartakovsky sequence, that's pretty neat.
Sure.
Anyway,
Sure.
point being, like, there were 7, like, in terms of, like, the hanging chads, like, they've been building up the guy in the shadows with the hat. The guy with the hat is Gustav Fires. He's called the Gentleman. He was a comic he was kind of an obscure pull from the comics. So this guy assembles the Sinister Six from the comics. So they were building towards Sinister Six since the beginning, but still, it's just like, come on, guys, let's. Apparently, he was originally
Also,
supposed to be.
Dragon, another reoccurring character I want to ask you about is the evil Indian guy.
That guy, yes. So he was in the deleted scene for Amazing Spider-Man, where when we had the lizard stuff, which, all the lizard stuff got cut. The idea was that he was trying to find he was on to the thing we learned in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He was on to Richard Parker may have done something to his son to find out, like, how to save Norman Osborn. Basically, crack the whole blood equation. Like, we can use Spider-Man's blood to save them from the debilitating disease, but the lizard ate him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, we lost that guy, but that's the thing. The Fires, like, he was the weird thing, and I don't know if they're going to go anywhere with this in the comics, or at least in the novel. It's a whole stupid thing where he kind of appears in a novel, but not necessarily the comics, or at least not in this form. Where his brother killed Peter Parker's parents. So I don't know if that was ever, if they're going to do anything with that, because originally he was supposed to be Electro. That's how he escaped. That's how he was supposed to escape that cell. Like, a lightning bolt happened, and that's how he kind of left the cell at the end of the post-credit scene for Amazing. So it was a lot of craziness, and of course you were going to see the beheaded Norman Osborn somehow come back to life in as a frozen Disney head. Sinister Six could have been crazy, but it had a really good director on, so I don't know how the guy who did, of course, one from Daredevil and as well as Bad Times at the El Royale. That guy was going to help with that movie, so it could have been good. Anyway, of course, we got Venom. Saw how that turned out. I guess the last thing to hit on would be Morbius. So Morbius, it's unclear what's going to happen, like, going forward. Like, Morbius and Doctor Strange 2, where both of these.
I always forget that Morbius just exists in general.
Well, Morbius is them
It's so
continuing
weird.
on the Venom track, where they're still doing movies that are kind of without Spider-Man, but basically Morbius is going to be the big tell-all thing, where basically, the Vulture is supposed to be in Morbius, which that's going to be a big thing for them to cross over the MCU into the Sony films, like, bring them into their neck of the woods and see how that's gonna go. And there have been pictures of both Spider-Men, from the Raimi Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man. So it's unclear, like, how they're gonna go about that. If they're gonna, like, maybe bring in, like, one of the old guys, if they're gonna, like, what universe they're gonna exist in, or if it's gonna all tie into Doctor Strange 2, where, like, we're just pulling from different universes and melding things together and multiverse madness. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, final thoughts then.
I don't know. I just there's a couple good things to glean from this whole mess of a franchise, but really at the end of the day, it kind of just reeks of corporate mandated. Like, we need to keep the rights to Spider-Man. We need to do Sinister Six. We need to do all these spin-offs. It's just, I don't know. I very rarely find myself going back to these movies outside of, like, maybe individual sequences, like the Stan Lee cameo in the first one, because I really don't think there's much here. I mean, we've already kind of covered how Gwen Stacy is, she is genuinely probably the best love interest in all three incarnations of Spider-Man. That's about the best thing about these movies. But my God, if I want to watch a romantic comedy, I'll watch 500 Days of Summer. So I don't know. There's just not a lot here. There's just not, it's an interesting kind of, like, awkward sort of like middle ground in the Spider-Man legacy before we. I still think that the Raimi trilogy is always going to be the best. I've just kind of come to a point where I've just sort of accepted the fact that nothing's going to beat Spider-Man 2 for me. It's like the original Jurassic Park. It's impossible to beat it. But the MCU movies, they are doing their best and they're doing something different. This, it's like it's doing something different, but it's doing it in a really weird way. And again, Dragon, I go back to your sandwich analogy, and it's not like it's not like a John Favreau Cubana sandwich. It's like a gas station Cubana sandwich. It's you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So. It might be a sandwich that's filled with tasty ingredients on paper, but those tasty ingredients aren't made right, man. So, all right. Final thoughts, everyone. Keep it brief.
No, I stand exactly where I stood at the beginning of the conversation where it's just they're not very good. They're awkward. They're pumped out. It's like you said. It's just corporate junk food, and it's just it's not even very very tasty junk food. So that's basically it.
Yeah, for me, you look at something like the Amazing Spider-Man. You look at the MCU. MCU has all the toys in the toy box versus like the Amazing Spider-Man, where they had just Spider-Man. But to be fair, in later years, we've seen with something like Marvel's Spider-Man game and the PS4 game and Into the Spider-Verse, we've seen that you can work with just Spider-Man if you don't get desperate, if you don't kind of like, it's like, we need the franchise. If you don't get crazy with it, if you kind of let it happen natural, if you work with the tools that you have, but you're really you kind of take your time with it and focus on the product before you're thinking of like the next one, you can do some good stuff here. But looking at what we have, just the franchise as a whole, I mean, it was an honest attempt that may have soared if it didn't go so close to the MCU sun, as it were. He was kind of like, if it didn't turn to Michael Keaton, as it were. Maybe they didn't soar so close to the MCU, they wouldn't have ended up turning to Michael Keaton with the Vulture and where things ended up going there. I like looking at this franchise like it's a glass half full attempt that impressed me and satiated the Spider-Man itch until we got things done properly with the MCU and gave us the next form of the off-the-page Spider-Man fare, which is something there's something to appreciate about that. What's not to appreciate about them? Like giving you some Spider-Man to hold you over.
All right. Well, folks, that comes to the end of our Spider-Man conversation. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Happy 4th of July, no matter where you are or how you're celebrating it in these weird, odd, troubled times that we're living in. And once again, big thanks to Romello Malone for suggesting this. Hope you had a good time with it, Romello. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. All right, laundry share.